Someone told you that you have a leg length discrepancy. So your legs are two different lengths. What does that actually mean? We're gonna go through that in this video. We're gonna break down exactly what it is because there's a lot of variables that we need to look at. It's not a death sentence. Let's get into it. How do they actually measure a leg length discrepancy? So what they do is they're measuring bones, typically the outside of the hip right here down to this fibula bone, or they'll measure the pelvis, the front of the pelvis, measuring down to here. So a true leg length discrepancy is something where we can't change it, where this area from here, or here, down to the leg is longer than the other side. We have different leg lengths, we have different sizes of our hands, we have different soft tissue, different sizes. You'll have a glute or a pec that is bigger or smaller than the other one. Those things happen just naturally in the body. Now with the SI joint with leg length discrepancies, it's a little bit more complicated, but we're gonna explain in this video and make it really simple because it's not a death sentence. It's not something you should think about that you have to long-term, you're gonna have a problem. Things are impacting differently, but if we can tighten those things up and make sure that we're lined up in the larger areas of the body, then you're not gonna have a problem with it. The last thing I wanna talk about on that is surgery. A lot of times people will come out of surgery. That's what we see here in the clinic. Somebody comes out of surgery and they say now their legs are different lengths. Well, what we see when people are in surgery, like they come with a leg length discrepancy, but then people that don't have surgery will also have a leg length discrepancy and their doctor will tell them about it. So either one of them, it's not a death sentence. We don't need to catastrophize it because there's more things going on that we need to look at. Most of the time you've tried shoe inserts for this or like heel lifts, and if it's not helping with you, then you probably have a functional short leg. So figuring out what a functional short leg, that's really the core of this video. What is a functional short leg? A functional short leg means that we have something going on up the chain. So if there's a change in the alignment of this joint, so our pelvis is made up of three bones. So we have the sacrum right here, in the middle, that's the bottom of our spine is the sacrum. And then we have the ilium on one side and we have an ilium on the other side. So the sacrum is the S and then the ilium is the I. So we call it the SI joint. And a lot of times chiropractors and there's really good chiropractors out there and there's some that aren't that great. And they'll say that your bones are out of alignment, your joints are out of alignment in your spine. Well, in the spine, we have this hard stop. We knock into these facets right here. They cannot get out of alignment unless you have a catastrophic injury. And they have joint capsules around them. Now, at the SI joint, it's very, very different. Right here, you can see this smooth surface where the sacrum and the ilium meet right here. That smooth surface, that joint can actually get out of alignment and it'll stay out of alignment. When it stays out of alignment, muscles will tighten up on one side and loosen up on the other side. And that's what we want to look at. There's six different dysfunctions of the SI joint. And so they can go in multiple different ways. And that it's really important that the person that you talk to about this is skilled in assessing that. So this smooth surface right here, and then we have this joint right here. So those are the two joints that make up the SI joint, what happens at the pelvis. This is the SI joint, and this is the pubic symphysis. Now, this right here, the ilium can be raised up, it can be an up slip, it can be a down slip, it can be an anterior rotation going forward, or it can be a posterior rotation going backward. And then it can also have an out flare and an in flare. So all of those things are really important, and the alignment of it is really important because they actually have to move it back into the correct position. They're not just looking to move it. They need to be able to identify where it is and then move it to the correct position. And that'll give you the leg length that you're looking for as close as what your anatomical start rate was, right? What were you born with? We're gonna give you some action steps on exactly what you need to do. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon because we're gonna put more videos on the channel of exactly what our clients do to fix these problems. The last thing that we need to talk about the SI joint, right? So we were talking about this is the sacrum, this is the ilium right here, and we have that smooth surface where these things will glide around, right? So there's muscles that act on that, and we look at them like a cross pattern. So we want to activate muscles that cross that joint, right? So right here, we have an oblique sling on this side that'll come across, and then we have the front side, we have oblique slings that cross. And so when muscles cross those areas, then it'll tighten it up. So we have to make sure that it's lined up in the right spot, and then we use certain muscles specifically together Follow us for videos on exactly how to do that, and leave us a comment if you want to know exactly what exercise we'd be doing with our clients, because we can give you more information on this, but you got to make sure that it's lined up. We'll talk about that at the end. Number one, you need to develop your glutes. The glutes are the biggest muscle group in the body. That's where our power comes from. So when you look at an athlete, they drive off of their hip, and they typically have really big butts because they've developed these glute muscles so they can drive out. These glute muscles also help us with stability in our pelvis. In the pelvis, if you cut this guy in half right here, you're not going to cut him here in his abs. You're going to cut him right here through his pelvis. So the pelvis and the hips is really the root of the body. And so we got to make sure that those things are lined up. When the pelvis is lined up and we're stable in those areas, then we're going to have really good outcomes long term. All of the problems that we see clinically, the problems, they go out towards the edge of a limb. So it's down in the knee, down the leg, right? So to fix those, we have to go up into the trunk. What's happening up here in the core of the body, which we define as the shoulder blades, the abdomen, and the hips. We want to tighten all this stuff up and make sure it's moving optimally and it's lined up correctly. And then we have a lot of power moving out, because what happens is we overstress those joints that are smaller and the muscles that are smaller down the chain if we haven't developed those muscles up the chain. So the glutes is the most important muscle group that we develop, because this is where our power is coming from. So follow us for videos on exactly how we develop the glutes. We want to fire up the muscles. It takes 2 to 4 weeks to get motor activation. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to start building strength. So when we're putting together a program, we always want to fire up more muscle fibers. These fibers fire really well. These ones don't. So if we do a sustained hold in the beginning and isometric, then when these muscle fibers fatigue out, our brain will recruit these fibers. So that's what we do here in the clinic. We always have people do exercises that are isometrics, where they're holding for a longer period of time, so their brain recruits more of the fibers. And then we go through a strengthening program because they have more of the glute fibers fired up. And that's what you want to do, is go through a progression where you're developing those glute muscles. You fire them up first, and then you develop them in growth, and you get more strength with that routine. Number 2 is soft tissue work. And that's where we really have to talk about the muscles that are acting directly on the pelvis. They're attached to the pelvis. So this is our major hip flexor. So the guts are cut away. This is the front of the spine right here. So if this muscle is going haywire, if we have problems with it, if it's tight, then we're going to have serious problems in the body, because biomechanics are going to change. We're going to change how we're putting stress on the spine, right? But we're also going to change how we're putting stress all the way down the chain. So we want to loosen this muscle up most of the time, because it gets short and tight because we're sitting for long periods of time. So we want to loosen up the hip flexors, but then also here in the glutes, we want to fire up the glutes. They're going to act on the hip and the pelvis. They're connecting them together, but we want to strengthen those muscles up. What happens over time is that they get tight and they're stuck together. They become very tender. So we have some videos on exactly how we break up the tissue right here, but we always want to loosen that up and do some soft tissue work, some soft tissue mobilization on these muscles. We do it on the front side, but then we always do it before we work the glutes. So we break up that tissue in the glutes with the lacrosse ball, and then we do our exercises. And so that's number 2, is making sure that we're loosening up that tissue around the pelvis so that we can get to the right alignment, because your body has a unique way of finding where it needs to be. Number 3 is find a great physical therapist, trainer, or chiropractor, because if they're on the right track, if they can look at it and see SI joints, this is probably the most complicated thing that we do in our industry. So finding a really quality person to work with, it's a very challenging thing. A leg length discrepancy is a very challenging thing to look at from afar and to just follow videos. To give them a good foundation to work with, we need to work on the glutes, we need to do the soft tissue work, but then you got to find somebody that'll look at it and say, hey, they're putting their thumbs right here, and this one's lower than this one, or this one's higher, and they will tell you, and then they have to realign that. And so if you find somebody that's really good, they can identify where that's at. That's a very challenging thing to do at home by yourself. So when you're dealing with a leg length discrepancy, you really need a quality person to work with long term so that they can help you fix it, but you understand how you're stabilizing those muscles at the same time. To summarize the video, why the fix-all exercises don't work online. There's a ton of videos online where people say, fix your leg length discrepancy by doing this exercise. It's because they don't know what the alignment is of the pelvis. And so we really have to go back to the pelvis and having somebody who is quality that's looking at it, that's telling you exactly what positions it's in, and then how they're gonna fix it, how they're getting it lined up, and then you're stabilizing it. If you haven't started using those muscles or they're too tight, you haven't loosened things up, you're not giving somebody a great body to work with. So you wanna find somebody who's quality, but you wanna do your part as well. And so developing the glutes and making sure that we have mobility and stability coming from the hips is really important. If you have any questions about this, leave a comment. We'll give you all the resources that we have to help you fix this long term. If you have a leg length discrepancy, but you're also struggling with a sciatica or low back pain, check out the videos here on the page. We'll see you in the next video. Get mobile and stay active.